الآن يمكنكم المشاركة في مبادرة الأيام الرقمية تحت شعار انطلق بقوة مع جوجل، والتي يتناول فيها خبراء جوجل عناوين جديدة أسبوعيا مثل السحابيات، مهارات من جوجل، أندرويد، فلتر، ذكاء الآلة، فايربيس، ديزاين ثينكينج، مقسمة إلى دورات وورشات عمل يومية بالإضافة إلى مسابقات أسبوعية. شاهد الأيام الرقمية مباشرة على اليوتيوب وشارك رأيك وأسئلتك مع خبراء جوجل، واحصل على شهادة حضور في كل محاضرة تشترك فيها. هذا وأكثر من الأحد إلى الخميس ابتداء من الساعة 9 بتوقيت دبي عبر الرابط المبين youtube.com/gdgmena.
Hello everyone and welcome to my session. We'll be sharing my slides in a second. So yeah, hello everyone. This is Ra'ouf, and today I will be talking about end-to-end testing, and hopefully by the end of this session, we will be able to learn a couple of things, how the process of end-to-end testing can be made easier for you, and you wouldn't think of it as something, and you will just straight away start about writing an end-to-end test whenever you have a new feature. So the goal by the end of this is I wish for that you will be able to write tests or end-to-end tests way easier. But before we get started, well, we have to make sure we are at least on the same page, but that's just a perfect dream when we are talking about testing, because there are a lot of trade-offs and a lot of misdefinitions here and there. So I will just hope that we will be on the same book and we do know a couple of things about testing. So I'm pretty sure you have seen all of the arguments in Twitter and any other place, for example, Reddit or any other place where there are communities of people talking about tests. Some people say that you write the tests and then you write the logic. Some of them say that you write the logic and you write the test. In other places, some people say you have to have 100% test coverage, otherwise you don't have an app. And then you go to the next level, people telling you you have to have tests from unit tests to an endless list of coming up with names of possible tests. To be clear, whatever I'm saying here, all of them are valid in your case. So I can throw it depends here all over the place, and to say that you write the test and the logic makes sense here, and you write the logic and then write the test makes sense here. So all of these are valid in your context, but they are not valid as a whole. You cannot tell me just to say that you need to have 100% coverage and you need to have all these types of tests in order to have a well-tested application. Sometimes it's just an overkill. So that's just what I wanted to clear out before we go ahead and look at the big picture of today's talk. So the idea here is that I'm not going to get deep into whether end-to-end testing is important or not in any context. I'm just going to go straight away and show you what are the current trends, because that's probably my reasoning for making this talk today. I have seen that the Flutter community is, at least after 4 or 5 years now, is getting bigger, meaning that more companies and more mature and bigger corporations are starting to take a look at Flutter and using it in bigger projects, and that will eventually lead to the increase attention to details and having more testable and maintainable code bases. And that can be done with many tools, and testing is obviously one of the main important tools to have a maintainable and at least a stable code base. So let's take a look at the big picture here. This picture is taken from the Google testing blog, and here they mention the testing paradigm, or I don't know exactly how to spell it, but the idea here is that this is the amount of tests that you need to, or the types of tests, like categorized in this way, and the amount. So at the bottom you see that we have unit tests, and at the top we have end-to-end tests. This paradigm, I guess, is showing us clearly that we can write as many unit tests as possible, and then we write less integration tests, but we write as small as not as many as possible, but just the necessary amount for end-to-end tests, and that's for one or multiple reasons. The first one is that the up you go, the slower they get. So unit tests are very quick. They are almost instantaneous. So they are very quick to run. You can write as many as you want, and it won't be a struggle. And it will be always convenient to write unit tests. It gets a bit more true, a bit less true when we go up. So with integration tests, they are not 100%. The same speed as units, but they are still fast. But whenever we go to the end-to-end test, they are very, very slow compared to the items below. So that's why we don't write a lot of them. And the maintenance as well. So end-to-end tests are exactly just a user, pretty much like an end user trying our application the same way you will try it in a device. So there are a lot of things that can happen wrong, and based on the device settings, based on some kind of an update, things can go wrong. And that also be one of the reasons for flakiness. So for example, for some reason, the connectivity drops, or some other reason related to the device itself, the test won't pass, and that will lead to some kind of a test flakiness, or maybe a timeout because of the device itself, or the how well the test was written. So the bigger picture here is that we write too many unit tests, and they are always gonna lead to more confidence, but we also need to write end-to-end tests, but those on the other hand are not very maintainable, are slower to write. So how can we make these more the end-to-end test more convenient, and why do we even care about them in our context? This is just a simple comparison here. It shows that the green check mark is on the favor of unit tests, but just check the last point. So fast, reliable, isolate, failure, they are all in the favor of unit and smaller integration tests, because they are just testing a single component, they are isolating it, and you could easily rely on them because they are isolated and just a simple code to run. But whenever we go to end-to-end test, they have one feature, and it is pretty much the most important for us as mobile developers, in the case of Flutter, which is simulating a real user and being able to end user will test it. So we don't have to do the manual testing ourselves, or at least do as low as possible of that. So the difference here is that the quality bar is way higher for mobile because of one difference, which is we have to go through app stores. So we don't have instant deployment like the web or the backend or any other ways of deployment. So we really need to make sure we do as much testing as possible in order to ensure that the quality of the application is good. So if there is a bug, it shouldn't be deadly. It should be fixable, but it shouldn't be deadly. So the end-to-end tests are the best way to ensure that something as deadly as a bug that won't allow the app, for example, to run, or the user is not to see some item, or for example, a very basic flow not being done, because we usually, for example, an application, we usually test only the new features. So yeah, the whole point, the bigger picture is that end-to-end tests, they are very important, but they are almost critical in the case of mobile apps, because we don't have a lot of chances to fix the bugs on the fly. Now let's take that into the context of Flutter and see what Flutter is providing us. So the Flutter since the beginning was very, very, very mature in terms of giving us testing tools. So we have unit test, and we have widget test, and we also have integration test. If you want to classify them here in this pyramid, you will say that unit and widget tests are almost both as unit tests, and whenever you integrate multiple units or multiple widgets, that's also integration test in the context of this pyramid. And then we have integration tests, which are named in Flutter as integration tests. These are what we mean by end-to-end tests. So the table here is just showing us couple of good and bad points of each one of them, but I think we already know that the main pain point of our main topic today is that it is slow and it is not convenient to write, so we always try to ignore it. So the integration test for Flutter, which is the end-to-end test, just to make sure we're on the same page here, is to test a feature. So you can just take one feature, a new feature that you have implemented in your app and test it, or you can have one integration test to test the whole application. But I mean, organizing the test is obviously going to be dependent on a lot of factors, but having smaller tests is gonna lead to increasing the time of the test. So if you have one test testing every part of the application, is obviously going to be very fast, because the reason integration tests are slow is because we have to run the application, install it again, and then fresh install. But that's also sometimes part of the test requirement. So there is also a lot of it depends to throw around here, but we will have a very simple example. Hopefully we will be able to run it. Yeah, I was on the fly, so I'm here not on my currently the device that I usually use for testing because I'm traveling. But yeah, let's hope that this demo goes as we expect. So here I have just a very simple application, and I'm trying to do some testing around the onboarding, because yeah, we would like to do the onboarding every time we release a new feature. We just go through the onboarding again. We just want to make sure that the onboarding is going to work all the time. So yeah, don't look at any of the details, just focus on the flow here. So we see the welcome page, we click on next, we have the email. Like, there is no validation or anything. This is pretty much basically just to show an onboarding flow and how that could look like. Password, and then next, user is selecting interests. I haven't gotten the chance to finish that, but here we see another option for the user in order to enable the notifications. That one as well is obviously broken. These are all on the fly, but I think we can see the picture here. We just want to have these tests implemented as an integration test. So every page here might have a controller view model. Those are the parts where you want to do the integration widget integration test, widget test, and the smaller isolated type of tests. But for us, what we want to do is to do exactly what I did right now, but with end-to-end testing. So let's do this real quick here. And for that, we will use the recommended package, which now comes by default. Whenever you create a new project, it's called integration test. Make sure you use this one instead of the one hosted on pub. And we go to create the integration test itself. So yeah, integration tests. Flutter. So I'm trying to follow the documentation in order to show where it falls very quickly. But let's just get the basics here, the boilerplate, and write the test. Project, let's see. Yeah, this is a simple end-to-end test. Actually, they have named it the right way here in the example. Instead of calling it just integration test, I think they have actually gone through some iterations around the naming of this package, and they had another package called E2E. Yeah, but we already know the difference by now. So we have a group of tests if we want. These are just the basics of the testing framework in Flutter, but for us, we want to make sure we are testing onboarding flow test onboarding. So this is another way, or at least another a way of grouping your test. For example, you have a happy path to ensure that everything, if the users are doing everything as expected, is going the right way, and then you start to have different cases or different tests for each time where there is an edge case or something that you want to handle specifically. So we run the application, and then we use the finders in order to find an element. For example, here, if I run the application again, or I should go to the code actually, so that we don't use a lot of time. So I will look specifically for this word, and I will use a finder. Let's see, find by text. Is there something like that? Text, give it and we use the tester on this item, and wait and settle after that. Then hopefully we think that that will lead us to the second page, which is, if I remember correctly, is the email one. So the email one, we'll do this real quick. So the email one is the next. We find, well, no. Yeah, so I think we just would like to find the word next instead. That's the one that we're copying. So yeah, it's next. We're copying this one here as well. We don't need to actually do anything on the email page, but we can do something such as type text or enter text, I guess. Yeah, enter text, and we find the element. But yeah, let's I don't know like an easy way to find the text apart from actually adding a hint or a tooltip or using a search by the item type. There are multiple ways. Let's put this here just so that I can explain the problems that we are going into. So after that, we run the tests, or you can just run all the tests at a single time. Okay. So now you clearly see the problems of slowness that I have been mentioning all the time. So now we'll try to run the application. So it will try to install it for a fresh install, and then we'll try to find those elements and tap on them. So again, this is not a crash course around integration testing package or testing in general. This is more about the tools that we will see in a bit and how they are trying to solve the current problems. So yeah, I think we have seen that. It was very quick, but I think you have seen that. That was real quick. I mean, at least the part where the app was installed and the test was run, that's for one single reason. It's not usually in real life as fast as that, because I'm literally using a sample project. So I'm using just native Dart packages. I'm not using any external package. So the the process of building is usually just a few seconds, and depending on what device do you have, it's not that slow. But when you have multiple of these, it's going to extend into hours and hours. So that's obviously the first problem. And now, if I go back to slides, we'll take some observations. The slow and how slow it is, but I think it wasn't very clear. Maybe if we compare it to unit test, you can obviously see that it is very much slow. It's the slowest type of tests. But if you take it on a bigger and larger scale with real life application, you will definitely see that it is slow. The boilerplate is the point where, yeah, we have to repeat, for example, pump and settle every time. So that's just one sample of the boilerplate that you're going to have to encounter when doing the testing with Flutter. And I think I wasn't sharing my whole screen, was I? Yep. That's a real shame. Yeah. I was just writing the whole code without showing my screen. Okay, lesson learned. Do not use a device that's not yours for making a presentation. But yeah, hopefully I will make it up to you within a few seconds. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Bartek, for letting me know. Yeah, I'm really sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, this is obviously what I have been writing for the last 5 minutes, I guess. It's just a very simple test, and I can run it again, hopefully. But while it's trying to run, I'm just going to show you that this is what I have been writing: a test in order to ensure that our onboarding flow is actually working. And these were the steps. And let's see when the application is running again. We'll take this observations again and then continue. Okay, so the test is running right now. Yeah, it was that simple and very quick, and it doesn't have neither expectations or anything. It was just to show that the running these tests is obviously slower than running the usual test, and the code that we have to write and we don't care about, for example, pump and settle, and you will encounter more of that whenever you're writing a real case scenario with real tests. So those were the 2 points that I was just talking about: the slowness of the test, especially when you take it on a larger scale and a bigger application; the boilerplate, the stuff that you have to write that are not related to the flow and maybe doesn't make sense when writing the code. And finding the widgets is the problem that I was describing here, which always gives the question, you're trying to find an element, you have to use your brain. You have to actually think about what you need to do, or a clever way of finding the widget. If I use the text, for example, I will need to have like a tooltip or an accessibility element around the text field that I wanted to access. But the whole point here is that I have to actually think about it and then go to the code, modify it, try to be clever around finding the element. So so I'm very sure that that's the right element I'm trying to find, and that's the part where finding widgets is going to be a bit of a problem, and it might distract you from writing the test. And the last part is we were talking about running the tests. These are just Dart tests, but we still have to access the native UI. We had the screen where when we enable push notifications, for example, that one will request access to the application. So our application here in this scenario required the users to enable their notifications. And if they don't, they won't be able to access the application. So we won't be able to test anything further unless we mock it. And the whole point of writing end-to-end tests is that we are end users and we don't want any mocking here or there. We want everything to be as close as possible to what the end user is going to see. So what can I do? For the current status, if the tests are slow when you're running them locally, you can actually get a better device that will maybe help you write more tests, because that was the case, at least for me, with integration tests, when I got access to a very, very fast device compared to the one that I use locally. It actually encourages you to write more integration tests because you don't have to wait for them a lot, at least locally when you're trying to run them. And also you have the option to run them on the cloud, but that's always an option. It was always there. The boilerplate, the way to solve the problem with boilerplate is having some testing helper or a robot class where you create some kind of a meta framework just around the testing framework provided by Flutter, so that you don't have to rewrite everything. And the other part about finding widgets is that we have to add keys to each element, or the important elements that are either tappable or are the main actions that users will do. But that's also kind of a problem by itself, because you still have to do that manual work. And for no access to native UI, and that's where you actually have to jump away from using your Flutter knowledge and use some native testing framework on top of Flutter. And yeah, that's just going out of the island of Flutter completely and trying to do something out of the context of Flutter. So yeah, now the exciting part, what are the solutions? So I will go to these solutions based on, these are solutions not exactly to these problems, but are just emerging solutions around the problem of testing and making the testing frameworks in Flutter more mature, because Flutter is getting more mature for sure. So Flutter is the latest, or the latest one that have shown up. It's open source. If I take that as a couple of wants users who are not developers to be able to write the tests, or at least, let's say, a person whose job is testing, they could write tests. So the main goal is actually to make that process easier and maybe totally delegate it, instead of us as developers writing those tests. Yeah, they can, the testers can help with writing some simple cases and help with that. Faster iteration, they have some really nice integration with the Flutter test, because the way you see me using Flutter here is using a Flutter integration test. So every time I want to try and iterate over my test, it will be almost impossible, because the test starts and then the test stops and the application ends. But if we do this, if we try to run the application, and instead of running the main, we run the integration test, that will show us some real nice trick. So here we are not using the Flutter testing framework to run the application. We are just using Flutter by itself, and this will run the test file. And from there, yeah, we will run the application and see how much accessibility, or how different that process is. And yeah, one of the things I would say, it's good, it's bad, I don't know, based on whatever you are making. For example, you're making an application where accessibility doesn't add up anything, or maybe you're just prototyping something, or I don't know. But forcing is always not the best thing to do. But in the bright side, if you require accessibility in your application, this one is a good way to enforce you to do that, because the whole framework, or Flutter framework, uses the accessibility tree in order to find your elements. So that's Flutter, it's the latest one. Now we have the one before it, which I'm very excited about. I spent the last week just writing tests for our application using Patrol. So Patrol is kind of different. It's not a meta framework. It's an enabler, so it's actually providing us to do something that wasn't possible by the other packages. So yeah, I think that's a very, very, very good use case. And the main problem that they are solving is that we don't have native access or UI elements that are native. We don't have access to them. So the scenario where I was describing that our application require opening notifications and enabling them, we won't be able to do that unless we write the native code. But Patrol is trying to do that for us using their implementation that we write the whole code in Dart, and then using platform channels, I guess, for Android and iOS, they do the job for us. So it is an enabler. They also have a meta framework in order to take the tedious part, which we mentioned in the observations, as writing a lot of boring code or a lot of repetitive code. So they do provide us with a nice meta framework as well, backed by one of the best Flutter team, LeetCode, and it's probably the one where it is actually used in real large applications. I'm not sure whether they have mentioned it in their blog post, but they are using it in one of their flagship applications. Maybe that was actually, if I guessed correctly, that's the reason they created this whole framework. The application was for banking in Poland. But the whole story around Patrol is amazing because it's an enabler. It's one of the best teams that fixes the problem of not being writing too much code, and it's already being used by flagship applications. So I think this one is my favorite. We also have another package called Convenient Test. This is mostly about graphical user interface. It makes the testing, instead of just something that you see in the code and you see the failing test and the non-failing test, it tries to visualize that and gives you some other nicer features, such as time travel, screenshots, videos, and all of that in a graphical user interface. That doesn't mean you won't be able to run it on the cloud, because they also have a headless option, so that it doesn't require a GUI or the device to have a display to run these. So Convenient Test is a GUI for managing tests. It provides us with a lot of options. And the next one is Honey. Actually, I have been following this. I have started this project last year when it was not announced, but was just created by Simon. And since then, he hasn't updated it for some reason, but now they are back. And I think they have recently announced it, but it's still not yet ready for production. But the whole picture around Honey is that it provides a custom language. So it actually enables non-dev to write the tests by creating a custom language and adapting that language to be as easy as possible for someone who isn't a Dart programmer or a native programmer, in order to do the testing, because it uses the Flutter widget tree as well. So you as a developer, you will also be required to write and give metadata around your components, so that Honey will be able to find those elements. And it's also backed by ClickUp. That's also like one of the most popular Flutter. I think I'm not sure whether are big, and I think them backing up their project is also a good sign. I think, yeah, this tweet is just a demo of Honey, because there wasn't actually a lot of documentations, and that's understandable, because they mentioned that it's not yet ready for production. It's just there for some time before they make it ready for production. But it is a really exciting project, and I checked the code source a couple of times, and it looks like a lot of work is going on there, and it will be something cool. Last but not least, we have something called Test Tweets, which was the oldest one. This project is, as I understand it, is a product that you have to pay for in order to have access to it, but it also has a very, very nice feature that is shown here in the video. So there is a level where the testers write the code, or they write the testing steps, but there is also this meta level where they actually try the application, or you try the application, and then the test is written for you, so that you don't have to actually deal with the language not being right, or you not being able to hit the right elements. You're just right using the application, and then the test tweets is going to figure out the best finders for you and the best process for you. So test tweets is a really nice find, and it's also an enabler because it enables non-developers to write the tests, because they don't have to write them. They are just using the application and navigating a couple of options. They also have a very nice graphical user interface for managing these tests. The only side is that I haven't been able to test this product because it was in beta or something, but yeah, I did not dig so much into this product. I just love the idea of you not having to write the steps yourself so much, and I believe that that's just natural progression toward the perfect setup. The takeaways from here is that we have seen 4 tools. Each of them has a very, very nice feature that makes it different from all the others, but no tool has actually has done all of them and everything. If they decide to fix the problem, they have to take one route, and taking that route is going to have to leave them empty-handed whenever they try to solve other issues. So it's not because they haven't spent as much as possible or they haven't invested a lot in it. It's just that choosing that direction is also going to enforce them not to be able to do other features. But the whole takeaway here is that the Flutter ecosystem, especially lately, is getting way more mature, and showing the love for testing is a great sign of that. Now, looking forward, we try to see the dream setup, or just dreaming what could be done and what could be possible. So have access to native UI like Patrol. I think that's a must. Sorry, I think I've missed the part where I just actually do the demo, but that's gonna run us out of time. I think the problem is that I have actually done the demo without showing the demo, but that's just a sad part of this one. But I think you will get the point just by looking at the documentation, because I think Patrol is one of the I think the only tool which has an excessive documentation around the usage of it, which is great. So the dream setup will be to actually have access. So that's a must feature, to have access to native UIs in order for us not writing tests. So a meta framework, not exactly a custom language, but a meta framework, and easier to understand with less complicated language conditions around it. It's just something simple where users will be able to write tests whenever they want without thinking about it twice. Fast to iterate, and that's another feature of Flutter that I did not get a chance to show you, but I think it's running up right here. So for when you run your test using Flutter Run instead of Flutter Test, you are running your application as a normal application, not as a test. So, for example, when I click on an item here, password test, it will try to give me a couple of data pointers around how I can find this element. So, for example, here, the next button, I click on it, it shows me that, okay, I think I'm just going to run the application again. This is one trick I do. In order for the test to keep working, is finds one widget, nothing. Okay, or finds, yeah, the trick is here. I have to do it. This for for us to show this. So yeah, you have seen the first element. Now I don't have to rerun the application again in order to run these steps that are written here and above. I just have to restart the application again, and the application is starting again, and they can iterate over the test. So that's I think also a very important feature in order for us to write the tests faster, instead of running the application and then terminating it and then opening it again, even though that sometimes is required in order to test, like, for example, the second run and the data being persisted and stuff like that. But on most cases, it's way obvious that we need to be able to iterate like we usually do with hot reload and hot restart, so that we don't spend a lot of time trying to do this stuff. The other thing with running it as Flutter test is that you get metadata. For example, I click on the next button, it gives me some data pointers about it. I think this one is not the right one, so again, okay, test finished. That's because this one is right. Okay, let's put something that's not right. Control R again. So it stops the test and it fails. So now if I click on next, it shows me a couple of finders. I don't have to think about them. It shows me a couple of finders. I can just copy one of them and then do the next action and iterate. So here I can do settle again. It shows me that this is the finder. It's obviously a very simple one. It's the same one, but let's go to something different. Or maybe let's call it something different. For example, password, firm, maybe. Then go back here. Control R. Then we try to find this exact element. We just click on it, and it shows us a couple of possible finders to get there. Actually, the best way is to use keys, obviously, but in order to prototype faster, these are always options. And if you know your screens are not that dynamic, for example, here in this screen, I know that there won't be a lot of other buttons. There is always going to be one button. I can actually use, for example, this one here. But if there is another text called confirm, there will be a conflict and won't be able to decide which element to tap on. So yeah, that's a nice feature of or a trick of how to iterate faster with Flutter testing, and that's enabled by default in the package of Flutter. So now we are back into our dream setup, an option for tests to be written for you, like test tweets. Yeah, I know this is going to be very hard and to do with having other features, because it depends a lot on the widget tree, and it depends a lot on Flutter accessibility widget tree in specific. So that's the 4th item. The 5th item is just an additional thing, but having a GUI for managing tests, like convenient test, that's like a dream setup. That's in a perfect world. I know it's not going to be possible, but that's just what we could imagine be happening. But it's not actually that far away. Some people are actually doing it with Flutter Patrol, for example. They already have the feature of native access, and now they are trying to see if it could be possible for them to integrate it with convenient tests. So that's actually 2 of the 5 pillars of the dream that I'm looking for. And I think that wraps things up. I hope I did not miss a lot, but yeah. But if there is anything we could answer right now, we'll do that. yeah, mostly problem of not being able to show the IDE. Yeah, so sorry about that. How to choose which programming language to adopt in order to opt for the test application. Thanks, Ricard. Let me read that again. How to choose which programming language to adopt in order to opt for the test. Clearly not sure what do you mean exactly here. I think I have to read the previous one. When does each type of test occur in the development lifecycle of project? How to proceed? Okay, I can say a thing or two about that. So at some point at the beginning of this talk, I was mentioning the development cycle, and that doesn't really matter if you write the tests before the deployment or after it. But I also said that it depends. So there are some times where you actually have the requirements, all of the requirements are ready, and you have to follow them one by one. So that's one of the cases where using test-driven development, for example, to proceed with to do your development lifecycle is a good way, because it will ensure that you have the highest quality. But if you are in an exploratory project, a startup, or anywhere else, writing the tests after is making more sense, because you don't know the exact requirements of what do you want to do. And if it is just an exploration, you just also don't know what you are looking for. So yeah, a little I'm following. Okay, sorry, just lost the connection for a second. Have you used Appium, and what do you think about it? Actually, I haven't tried it. I was just looking for the tools to compare them with what we are looking at right now, and seems like Appium and Mastro are the ones to compare in the native land. So I think that if I'm getting everything correctly here, I'm using my data. Yeah, sorry, that screen wasn't showing. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. I'm really sorry about the screen not showing up for some time, but hope you got something or two out of this session. Thank you so much. See ya.